When Brian and I were planning this service, it was a gorgeous fall day. But being New Englanders, we knew to have a plan B. So I'm going to give you the plan B now so you understand what's going to happen at the end of the service, because it's a little different. On that gorgeous fall day, we imagined at the end of the ritual taking our bowl of water and stones, which will make sense in a minute, and all going outside and gathering around a tree back there and pouring it into the earth and singing Lone Wild Bird outside. We're not going to do that. I will go outside at the end and pour the water there. Anybody who wants to come with me is welcome, but we will end the service by singing Lone Wild Bird in here. If you want to watch me pour the water, you can go to the window and watch me. Brian will play kind of a riff, is that the word, on Lone Wild Bird, and then that will be our postlude. So just so you know what's going to happen at the end, because it's a little different. And I know communication, right? We like to know what's happening. Mr. Rogers taught me that, right? I want to know. I'll be wanting to know. So that's how we're going to end things a little differently. But let me tell you a little bit about what we are going to do. So tomorrow is Indigenous Peoples Day. And it used to be Columbus Day, celebrating America's discovery in 1492 by Christopher Columbus on behalf of the Kingdom of Spain. But America was already very well discovered by the many indigenous nations who'd been living here for generations already. And Columbus's discovery, which led to genocide and removal of indigenous peoples from their lands, actually caused tremendous grief and suffering that I think our country is still grappling with today. In braiding sweetgrass has become a sacred text to me. I return to it often. In braiding sweetgrass, Robin Wall Kimmerer, a botanist and a member of the citizen Potawatomi Nation, writes, "The federal government's Indian removal policies wrenched many Native peoples from our homelands. It separated us from our traditional knowledge and lifeways, the bones of our ancestors, our sustaining plants, children, language, lands. Almost everything was stripped away, stolen when you weren't looking because you were trying to stay alive. In the face of such loss, one thing our people could not surrender was the meaning of the land. In the settler mind, land was property, real estate, capital, or natural resource. But to our people, it was everything: identity, connection to our ancestors, the home of our non-human kinfolk, our pharmacy, our library, the source of all that sustained us. Our lands were where our responsibility to the world was enacted. Sacred ground." Last year, I took a course led by Francis Weller centered on what he called the 5 gates of grief. And I've shared his work and the ritual we will do today before, but I'm going to give you a quick refresher. According to Weller's research, grief is the defining experience of our humanity, something that we will all experience and all must grapple with to become mature, wise adults. Wise people understand that loss is part of being human. But more than that, grief is related to both love and gratitude. We mourn what we love, and if we are wise, we are grateful for what life has given us to love, even if we will lose it, even our own lives. Furthermore, grief is much more than the loss of our loved ones. Weller identifies 4 other gates of grief that we traverse in our lifetimes. Grief for love that we should have received but did not. grief for hopes and dreams that we have had to let go, ancestral grief, what Kimmerer describes, ancestral grief passed down through the generations. And finally, grief for the sorrows of the world. As Indigenous peoples have long recognized, we are all connected, not just to one another, but to the animals and the plants and the earth herself. And as they suffer, as the earth suffers, so do we, whether we acknowledge it or not. And I've come to believe that the political divisions, the hateful rhetoric, the violence, the terrible wars can be understood in part as grief run amok, unacknowledged, unresolved, immature, denied, manipulated by politicians and power mongers. And as the climate is disrupted, as plants and animals and ecosystems disappear, as weather patterns swing wildly and seas warm and rise, we are feeling the earth's grief in our bones, whether we acknowledge it or not. And the emotions are strong. Ritual. Ritual is important because it's a way to acknowledge, honor, and make sacred our grief, whatever its source. To bear witness to it in ourselves and one another. So this morning, I'm going to invite us again to participate in the stone ritual for the sorrows of the world that Francis Weller developed along with Holly Truar, Carl Rabke, and Aaron Gesseman-Rabke. As Kimmerer notes, ceremonies or rituals, large and small, have the power to focus attention to a way of living awake in the world. And they serve as a vehicle for belonging to a family, to a people, and to a land. The ritual that we do today, I hope, invokes this power of attending to the ways that grief tells us that we belong to one another, and that we belong to the earth through love and through gratitude. So this is how we'll work. I will give an invocation, and then I invite you, if you wish, to come up this way, our usual way that we do rituals and communions, and take a stone, and name in a sentence or two a grief you are carrying in your heart. Then place the stone in the bowl of water that's there. And it can be any kind of sorrow. It can be a personal grief you're bearing. It can be one you are witnessing in the world, the suffering of children, the wild ravages that are happening to the earth and her creatures, or the violence that is afflicting so many. This is a ritual where we go slowly and we pause and let your grief fall. The stone into the water, let your grief fall into the stone and into the water. And listen attentively to the sorrows named by everybody else. And if you're attending from home, I invite you to place your stone in your bowl of water and share your sorrow in the chat. And once everybody has shared their sorrows who wants to, I'm going to ask us to pause and just sense into the truth that our sorrows are shared and that this is our grief. And let that sink into our bones. And then I will take the waters outside and pour it on the tree near the labyrinth. And as I said, you are welcome to stay warm and dry, or you're welcome to come with me. So before we begin our ritual, and Brian will play very lovely while we name our griefs, I wanted to offer these words by Carrie Newcomer. as an invocation for our ritual. Somewhere, someone needs help. Send love. It matters. If you can't get there yourself, then take a deep breath. Breathe in the weight of their troubles. Breathe out and send all those burdens into the light, where sorrows can be held with the most tender and infinite grace. Breathe in what you can do. Breathe out what you can't change. Spool out a thread of connection. Send courage and calm, for the nights can be long and filled with shadows, and sometimes terrible, unexpected waters will rise. Somewhere, someone needs help. Send love. It matters.
I grieve the denial of climate change.
A personal, weird grief. My father has been dead for many years. I am so glad that narcissist is gone.
I grieve for all the people in Appalachia who never thought a hurricane was going to wash away their world.
I grieve for the wars in the Middle East.
A grief for 3 friends of mine, one who lost her beloved dog of 12 years who was her constant companion, and 2 others who lost close relatives within the past month.
My grief is for the Christianity, for the phony Christians who are using the words of a great prophet to divide and to marginalize.
I grieve for my husband Dan and the many friends and family we've lost over the last couple of years.
I grieve for my brother who has just lost another one of his very close friends, and he's having a hard time. And I grieve for my beloved cousin who is quite ill.
Personal grief.
I grieve for the communities in the Middle East who have lost lives and safety and community.
I grieve for the people in Ukraine and Gaza and Sudan who are living through war.
I grieve for my uncle who is suffering from stage 4 Parkinson's disease. And I also grieve for the marginalized peoples whose spirits are being crushed by politics today.
I grieve for the loss of my family members and for everyone who has been affected by all of the terrible flooding.
I grieve for the lack of compassion in the world today.
My grief is for my brother Andre's family. They got a lot going on there with illnesses and surgeries.
For the families of all those who are missing, whether they were taken, washed away, or just wandered off.
I grieve for anyone who is or has been abused by a loved one.
I grieve for all those who are suffering chronic illness and those family members and friends that walk with them, especially those in the waiting place.
I grieve for the many innocent lives, especially of the children, that are being destroyed because of the violence, conflicts, and wars that are going on around the globe today.
Breathe in what you can do. Breathe out what you can't change. Spool out a thread of connection. Send out courage and calm. For the nights can be long and filled with shadows, and sometimes terrible, unexpected waters still rise. Somewhere, someone needs help. Send love. It matters. Amen. And blessed be.